Hey folks, it's Justin Nation from Nindie Spotlight here, and I'm reviewing the PDP Afterglow wireless controller for the Switch. Um, just in time for Black Friday, which is actually when it becomes available through the PDP website or Amazon.com. I saw. I don't know if it's going to be in retail stores or not, but at least those two are ways to get it. And the good news is if you've been holding off, feeling like the Nintendo's own Pro controller, which is a controller, it's excellent. I've been using it since day one. But if you've been feeling like, it's a bit pricey, or if you've been looking for a second one, and again are hesitant to pay for full price for a second one, this is actually an extremely viable choice. Um, so here's a look at, it's generally it's pretty much identical to the Pro controller in terms of its dimensions and even its weight and feel. You can see them side by side. They are, uh, you know, pretty much exactly the same. The face buttons, everything's pretty much identical. The home plus minus buttons, those are a little higher on this, which was a little strange at first, getting used to it, because I would go and I'd actually accidentally hit the home button instead of plus, but that's a minor thing. Um, the D-pad is pretty much identical. Um, it works. I'd say it works a little bit better than the Pro. The Pro controller's D-pad is notoriously not very well set up. I wouldn't say that this is perfect, but I'd say at a minimum it's no worse. And I'd say arguably it's a little better. Um, Another difference is the ridge that's around the edge of the joystick. It's more pronounced on the PDB controller. At first, I wasn't really necessarily a fan of it. I was actually afraid that after using it for a while, it might you know you get sort of the old Nintendo thumb kind of thing. But I haven't had any problems with that playing it for hours. Um, it is, I think it. There's a little grippiness on the edge here, so I think it actually does a better job of you know being stable and sort of holding onto your thumb. So I think that might have been the design principle behind the way it is. There's very small ridges on the end versus this on the Pro controller. It's smooth. The triggers do feel a bit different. They're a little bit more pronounced. I think actually, if anything, it's probably better. But it's one of those feel things. I don't really know that there's a massive difference. One thing that's included that is a feature that I'm not that they had on their wired controller that I'd commented on before. I've taken off the plate. There's a plate that actually goes on the back that these areas here, there are triggers. They're on the back. So if you're holding it, you have an additional way of, I think you map them, but there's sort of additional triggers that you can use, and they could be convenient. For me, I found them too easy to use, so I was accidentally tripping them. So it's there's a little slider down here. There's a little slider down here that lets you pop it out. It's just a little piece of plastic in the end that has two raised pieces on it. Um, but yeah, it's a feel thing. You can take it off, which I did, and it feels fine holding it without it. One definite difference between the two is the finish on the plastic. The Pro controller, mine's looking a bit smoother because of use, but there's more of a matte kind of finish. There's I don't know, it's like almost slightly textured and dimpled on the Pro controller. It's very subtle, but on the PDP controller, it's completely smooth plastic. At first, it was a little awkward or just odd feeling them, but after playing with it for hours, it's not a problem and it feels fine. And actually, if you've not had a Pro controller, obviously you're not going to know the difference. But it is the touch. It does feel a bit more plasticky, but in terms of heft and everything, it feels great. Playing with it for many hours, and sort of going back and forth. My wife and I played Luigi's Mansion 3. We sort of traded back and forth between these. The that uses gyro control for aiming in some situations, and I didn't find there to be any difference between the two. So the gyro controls that are possible with this are in no way inferior or different even than the Pro controller. It felt pretty much the same. Did not see any discernible difference. The one big feature that's missing from this, and helps probably with offset because this is a bit cheaper than Pro controller, is the fact that there's no rumble. Um, Depending on how you feel about rumble, that could be a deal breaker, or it could just not be that big a deal to you. That's all a matter of preference. Um, its battery life seems perfectly fine. Played it for a long time without a charge, no problem. Um, Pairing it, in a previous video when I'd shown it, I'd I'd said that it was a bit confusing pairing it, and that's because I thought you had to tether it to the Switch physically. I was making it more difficult than it was. If you go into the pairing menu for the on the Switch menu, and just try to find the controller and hold down the buttons, it'll find it. So that was relatively simple actually, and I'd made it more complicated than it was. Um, then the other feature that we'll want to show is, and it was in the other video, but we'll show it here. And let me turn off the lights quickly. Is the fact that it glows. My dog there very quickly. Okay. So before I was a bit confused about I didn't understand how to change the color incrementally, and it's actually, you can, if you use the D-pad, you can incrementally cycle through the color to find sort of which color it is that you want. My wife she was a big fan of purple, so sort of the atomic purple look is an easy one to rock. And then if you do it differently, if you use the triggers, it'll cycle through some other, you can get sort of a breathing effect, it'll get a color cycling effect in some cases. You can sort of play with it. You can change the intensity of the glow. You can turn it off. You can make it oops. I turned off the controller itself. Come on, pair it back up. And I managed to turn it off. Turn it off. That's weird. Anyway, so you can cycle through the colors. When it charges, it'll actually stay solid red until it's charged, and then it'll switch to solid green, which is interesting. Just a simple thing. Let me hold on a second. It does seating the charging wire is a little weird, but yeah. So it'll be red up until the point that it charges fully, and then it'll change to green automatically. So that's a nice little touch. But overall, extremely impressed. My wife was sort of getting tired of using the Joy-Con with the grip. So we'd been thinking about trying to find a Pro controller kind of solution. So when I'd seen this, I reached out immediately. It sounded like a perfect thing. And like I said, if you're not set on Rumble, this absolutely is a great alternative to Nintendo's own Pro controller. Pretty much identical in every way, in terms of feel, in terms of quality. Rumble being the big difference, and if you really are into the classic translucent kind of look, which I know some people are, fulfills that very nicely. And then the fact that you can set the LEDs, hey, you can pick the colors as well, and this is sort of the breathing effect that you can turn on as well. So overall, a huge thumbs up for this one. And if you've been looking for something for Christmas for your Nintendo fanatic, this may be a very good choice. So thank you for listening, and I'll be talking to you later. Thanks.